What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Appreciate you being here. Happy Wednesday. It's a good day. I want to put a couple things out real quick before we get into today's video. A couple people have made some comments or whatever. They're like, oh, you want to be a YouTuber? You want to do this? Look, man, I just have a story that I want to get out. I am not looking to get famous. I am not looking to make money. I am literally doing this for my entertainment and yours. And I've kind of rekindled my friendships and hanging out with some of my army buddies and stuff that I haven't talked to in over a decade. And this is good for me. This is good for everybody. So, guys, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Let's get into this next one. So today we're actually going to be talking about Iraq. What I went through there, some of the area around Iraq, what I actually think Iraq was all about. Do I disagree? Do I agree? Why were we there? Not really sure. But however, we're going to visit all those things today in this video. Please, guys, like always, like and subscribe, and your comments are always answered. And thank you so much. So my first deployment, I really did not know what Iraq was about. Didn't have any clue. All I know is that the area that we occupied, it was pretty low key for me. Like I said, my first deployment, I did counter mortar fire. I was pretty much stuck on the FOB, living in the Connex. I did go on some patrols. I'm going to give you a little synapse of what some of those patrols were my first deployment. My second deployment was nothing but patrols. It was completely all patrols and trying to train Iraqi police and these bitch-ass dudes that were scared to fight. And a lot of these guys were scared. As soon as anything would kick off or maybe start to kick off, these guys were hightailing it, hiding behind Humvees that we gave them. So first and second deployment, night and day compared to what I did. So let's go into that right now. One of the deployments I went on towards the tail end of my first deployment, we had bitched and moaned enough to our platoon sergeant. We have went stir crazy living in these Connexes. The monotony of day-to-day grind, of just living on a FOB. All of our buddies up north, we've lost at this point probably like 10 of our buddies. Like, we feel terrible. These guys are up there in the shit. We're stuck down here in Luxuryville, and I to this day feel horrible about that. Now, these guys know this was out of our hands. We had no control over this. We were stuck where we were stuck. We couldn't do anything about that. Okay, we tried. Me and like 4 other guys, we put up like, hey, can we go to Normandy? Can we go up north to the FOB they were at? Like, can we go with our guys? Like, can we get up there? Like, we tried. I swear we tried. It wasn't happening. They said what we were doing was extremely important. I don't know. But we were probably technically, other than the guys that shot down the actual missiles that came in from the main station that was on the FOB, we were the only counter mortar fire they had for the FOB. This is where we were. So we were stuck. So towards the end of my first deployment, our platoon sergeant, he allowed us. He was like, look, I'm going to hook you up with one of these NCOs from 282 Field Artillery. They patrol every day. You want to go out on some patrols? You can go out on some patrols. So we did. So I hooked up with a crew, and me and one of my other infantry guys, we hooked up with these guys in Humvees. And we're going outside the wire. I didn't go outside of the wire my first deployment till like the 10th month we were there, and we were there for 15 months. All right? So I remember this vividly. Leaving the wire for the first time. Okay? A lot of my other buddies have been on countless patrols up north. That's all they've done is patrols and Bradleys and everything. These guys are hitting horrible IEDs. Terrible IEDs. IEDs that have blown turrets out of a Bradley. That a Bradley's a very heavy vehicle. To hit like a triple stack AT mine or something and actually move a turret and shoot that bitch probably 100 feet in the other direction, that is a big bomb. Terrible things how these people fought. Okay? They're not going to fight you straight up. Very rarely if that was to happen. But they will dig a hole in the side of the road and annihilate your whole existence. Which is some straight bitch shit, but like, that's the way they did this. They dug these holes a lot of times in the dark. They knew the routes we would patrol. Okay, well, you have to leave out this gate or this gate. They usually leave around this time. You would catch a lot of these guys like through the camera system that we had back then, but you're not going to catch all of them. So, my first deployment, leaving the wire. So upon exiting the wire, you are going to line up your Humvees. There is a security team that mans these gates. These guys are not in the military, at least the United States military. These guys were all from Africa, like Africa. They would man these gates. It's what they were tasked out to do. They would man these gates. They would open the gates. They would close the gates. They would watch the gates. It's what they did. So we line up our Humvees. As when you're exiting the fob, you are going to. I was a gunner. I was on a 240 Bravo machine gun. So that was my role. That's what I did on this very first mission I went out on. A lot of times I would go out on missions. I would be a dismount. I would be somebody that just gets out of the Humvee and goes clears buildings or houses or whatever it was. But leaving the wire, you're going to go to a test pit, is a fire pit. You are going to aim your weapons to the right side or left side of the vehicle, and you are going to shoot your crew service weapons into a big mound of dirt. Okay, so you're going to charge your weapon, 50 cal, 240, whatever, and you're going to lay some rounds and make sure that gun is active and operational. It's what you're going to do. Also, when you return to the fob, you are going to come to a clearing area. That is where you're going to unload your weapon, make sure there is nothing actually in the chamber, and you're going to fire your weapon, dry fire. You're going to make sure nothing comes out, that you don't have loaded a hot gun coming back into the fob. It's the way it was done. How it's done now, I don't know. But I'm telling you what I went through, okay? So leaving the fob, our first time, we go out. I remember the area we were in, a ton of canals, all right? A ton of little ravines of water that ran through some kind of irrigation system or whatever they had going on. A lot of this was farmland, the area I was at. A lot of it. I remember I started seeing a ton of farmers. A lot of people out by their houses, holding shovels, holding pitchforks, holding whatever. A lot of muddy areas, them trying to grow crops. You're out, you're in sector now. You are on just a regular basic patrol. The object of this patrol, and before you go on any patrol, you're going to do a meeting to say, this is what we're doing today, this is the route we're taking, we're going here, we're going there. All this is delegated from the commander to the platoon sergeants en route to show you where you're going to go on these patrols. We had a mission that day. We heard that there was someone who had been digging bombs. Apparently, this patrol that I was in, they had been to this house many, many times. It is in a village. When you pull up to these Iraqi villages, it's kind of like watching paint dry. Not a lot going on. If you ever see people running or something, it's probably kids. A lot of these times, you would not see men. You would see only women. The men are probably out doing something they shouldn't be, just to be completely honest about that. I remember we pulled up to this village. I am in the gunner's hatch on this Humvee. To the front of me is our platoon sergeant, or a sergeant that I was tasked out to, not my actual platoon sergeant. He was back on the fob, but I was there with a 282 field artillery platoon sergeant. I think his name was Sergeant Hicks. I'm not really sure. Anyways, we pull up to a town. We want to focus on this one house. We have our Humvee stage where we all have 360-degree security to make sure nobody comes in our area. Rules of engagement have changed off and on. Rules of engagement, by the way, just to tell you what that is, it is the rules on how you engage the enemy. They changed probably 50 times over the course of my time in Iraq. There was some rules of engagement that after a certain time, anybody that was on the road, a lot of them times, you could engage if things changed. I'm just letting you know, rules of engagement change. Hey, anybody with a shovel, anybody with a cell phone, anybody with they change constantly. I'm not saying this happened. I'm just saying that the rules of engagement changed all the time. So we pull up to this town. Before entering this town, we are at the base of it. We see something. It is a bongo truck. And I will put a little picture up of it in the thumbnail of this video. A bongo truck is like a little cargo truck. Almost shouldn't be considered a truck. It's more like a car, but they put stuff in the back. A lot of times you're going to find fruit in the back. All kinds of stuff that they go and whatever. So a man is driving this vehicle. My platoon sergeant. Orders, we ride up on the side of this guy, tell him to stop. Somebody gets in front of him. They pull this guy out of the vehicle. This is my first experience with probably senseless violence directed from us towards them. I'm not saying that this was uncalled for. I just think this was a bit extreme from watching, and I could see why these fucking people hated us. Okay? So they pull this guy out of this truck. We have an interpreter with us. The interpreter and the platoon sergeant are standing there talking to this guy. Instantly, my dismount's ordered to get out, start to tear apart that truck. Okay, at first he's taking the stuff off the back, just sitting on the ground. Platoon sergeant comes over. I'm not going to give his name because this probably wasn't very called for. He takes his whole shit and throws that out of the truck. All this fruit's on the ground, bottles of soda, all kinds of stuff. All this stuff is thrown on the ground. Okay? While this guy is on his knees with a gun to his back. I remember sitting in the gunner's hatch like, what the fuck? Like, alright. Like, so they're just housing this guy's whole shit. I remember watching this. I was like, what the fuck? Like, alright. You know, I'm still trying to, like, scan my sector and everything. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? They keep asking this guy, what do you have? What do you have? And he's like, I have fruit. This is all I have. I have fruit. They start digging deeper in this van. They find like 5 different license plates. I don't know what possessed the platoon sergeant to do this. He is convinced these are pressure plates. These are pressure plates that this guy has in the back of his truck and they literally look like license plates. There's metal pieces of plates and they actually had writing on them and stuff. They destroy this vehicle. I'm not talking like shoot it and bomb it or nothing like that. They just rip it apart. They rip the inside out. They rip everything out. They don't find anything. We don't find anything. I remember a platoon sergeant kicks the shit out of this guy in the back while he is on his fucking knees with his hands behind his back. Kicks him. His face hits the dirt. Everybody gets back in the vehicles. Charlie Mike, continue mission back to entering this village. First thing I've ever seen that I was like, holy shit, we just fucked that guy's day up and he didn't have anything on him. I'm like, well, is this how we treat these people? Is this what it should be? Like, I'm not really sure. That was my first experience. And we haven't even entered the town yet. Let's get into the town right now. So when we get into this town, there is a building that we want to focus on. We have staged our vehicles accordingly to where we can still pull security. That is the biggest thing you do on these patrols, is 360-degree security. Someone watching entrance to town, exits to towns. You are watching everything you can. Some of these towns are very, very small and compact, and there's a ton of shit going on. Little markets they have. One thing that always amazed me about being in sector, it seems like some of these towns don't have hardly any electricity but 2 hours a day, but they all have a fucking satellite dish on top of these little mud huts they have. I don't know how that's possible. Another thing that you're going to see in these towns is extension cords and wires everywhere. It's how they feed their electricity. Imagine taking a power strip, plugging in 5 other power strips to this to try to get some kind of electricity daisy chained from house to house to house to house. Some of these towns, I'm telling you, had hardly any electricity. So this is how they would get it. So, and another thing, stray dogs. There are stray dogs everywhere. I experienced this a lot more in Missoula, which is a bigger city. Patrolling that AO, that's a fucking mess. But these are stray dogs everywhere. Everywhere. And these dogs look like they have survived the plague. They have mange. Their fur is matted. These dogs could probably eat a license plate and process it through their body. It's these dogs, I'm telling you. They look like they've had a bad day. Like them commercials you see on TV, like donate to save a dog. These are those fucking dogs. These are those dogs that have... I think one dog actually asked me for a cigarette one time. I was like, God damn. I was like, that dog's a fucking G, man. Like, no, these dogs, they look tough. So anyways, we get to this town. So here we are. We're staged everything. The building we want is right there. My platoon sergeant, or the sergeant I was with, Sergeant Hicks, like, hey, go ahead and dismount. Where I was, we still had security. He's like, hey, we need more guys in this house. Okay. I hop out, go through the little hatch, out the back door, have my M4. We get in, we go into this house. We go into this house, ain't really nothing going on. It's like a woman and her 4 children, a couple, I don't know if they were girls, boys, whatever. They were little kids. All right? So my sergeant, he says, hey, clear this house. It's a small house. There's only like 3 rooms and a shitty bathroom or a hole in the floor where they pissed and shit in. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So me and 3 other guys, we clear this house. We don't find anything. We're looking through drawers, we're looking through cabinets. We don't find anything. We don't see anything. He comes up to me, the platoon sergeant. Like I said, I'm not going to give his name. They have in their living room where they are sitting. Now, this isn't a traditional living room. Iraqi living arrangements. You're going to see up tons of this little bedding. It's like these little mattresses that are probably about that thick, and they're all stacked in a pile. It's what they usually sit on. They probably sleep on. Doesn't matter. There's usually a stack of these somewhere, at least my experience. He goes over to this cabinet they have on the wall. It is a freestanding cabinet. It's against the wall. All right? There are things in here. They're glassware. They're cookware. Cups, plates. You name it, it's in there. He's like, go ahead and get behind that. All right, so I'm trying to like move it out from behind the wall. Nah. This guy comes over. In front of this entire family, puts his hand behind that bitch and tips that whole fucking thing over. Goosh, bing, you hear shit breaking everywhere. Ting, pow, like these people are watching us, staring at us as we absolutely destroy everything in their house. Everything. Senseless. I remember this. And we actually, you know what? We actually found an AK. Okay? We found an AK behind that. You're allowed to have an AK in Iraq. You're allowed to have a weapon to defend yourself. And there, we would find AKs all the time. In the sand, we would find AKs anywhere. But we found an AK. So they're interrogating this woman. You mean to tell me you didn't know that was back there? We asked you if that was back there. Rightfully so, we did. I remember hearing that. They asked, the interpreter asked, like, hey, do you have any weapons? Do you have this? You need to tell us. House their whole place. Everything. The mattresses come off. You name it. If it could probably be destroyed, we destroyed it. Does that make that right? No. That's fucked up. But we didn't find anything other than that AK. Checked out a couple other places in the village. Nothing. We didn't find anything. Seemed like it was maybe some bad intel or something that had happened. But you have to realize, we get to get back in our Humvees and leave that place. These people now get to clean up the pieces of their lives. That was one of my first experiences that I was like, we just destroyed that house. Other than actually setting that house ablaze on fire, we just destroyed that person's whole life. Everything. We're leaving. I remember I was seeing the woman crying and stuff. And I'm thinking, this isn't right. This isn't right. Like, this is fucked up. Trust me, I'm not that bleeding heart person. But, like, I was like, that's kind of fucked up we did that. But unless this is how you produce the result you wanted to find, I didn't really know. These people, we just got some intel saying there were people there doing stuff they shouldn't. We found out they weren't. Bad scene all around. We finish our little patrol there. We go to the next area. So we go to the next area. We're not going to another town. We're just patrolling the canals, looking for bad people doing bad things. We don't really see anything. This patrol has went on now for a couple hours. It's time to go back. Okay? So we turn around. We are going back. We go back. We get to the fob. We didn't find what we were looking for. We clear our weapons. Back on the fob we go. This was my first patrol outside the wire, and I was thinking, what just happened? And guess what? They're going to go and patrol again. Not that day, but the following day, they're going to go out. Now think about this. What did we accomplish in that? Okay? We destroyed everything these people know. I'm sure everyone that lives in that town is helping this person try to get their maybe house back in order, trying to fix whatever they could. We've just destroyed everything that they had. Was this right? No, I don't think it was right. This was, like I said, this was my first impression. I'm not saying every time we did patrols it went down like this. Did this happen? Yes, it did. But we caught bad guys doing this. We did. However, not so much in this case. We didn't find anything other than a lone AK. So, I don't hear anything for a couple weeks. These patrols have went on. I've went on a couple more. Nothing really exciting. It has to be exciting. You always want to be safe. You want to bring all the guys you left with back with you. You always want to do that. So a couple weeks later, I hear that the crew, not the crew I was actually with that day, but another guys from 282 were outside that town, and these guys hit a massive IED outside that town. Killed 2 guys. I think it took 1 guy's leg. These are horrible things that happen to soldiers. Horrible things. Does that have any backlash from what we did to that person's house? I don't know. I really don't know. Were those people happy with us? Absolutely not. I know they weren't happy with us. Nobody was happy with that. These are the things that happened in Iraq, and things that ultimately I never really could understand why. But like I said, this is what it was. So our goal in Iraq, this is what I thought it was, and this is what hopefully we were trying to achieve there. This is what I gather from trying to make the point of this video now. So what we were meant to do is, from what I heard or what it was, is we are trying to train these Iraqi police and the IA, the Iraqi army, to defend themselves against these bad guys. We are also trying to build some kind of a democracy in Iraq. Okay? I remember I had a first sergeant, before every patrol, this guy would say, "Are you ready to go win the hearts and minds of Iraqis through acts of extreme violence?" That's what he would say. I've went to some of these areas that they would vote in. What we would do is we would pull security on these people and let them go to these voting booths and vote. All right? A lot of this was very, very low key. They would come in, they would trickle in, they would walk in, they'd do their voting. You're trying to take a third world country that has never known democracy. They have only known an extreme dictator, and they have known lead or fire and brimstone approach of managing a government. These people are not used to a democracy. This is not what this is. We don't all get to decide what's best for us. They don't all get to decide. We're trying to force these people to do this. I don't think they even wanted this shit. They did not like us. This is what you're going to do. This is what it is. They didn't like this. They didn't want this. There's a story that a commander told me. Now, this is a story he told me, so I'm just going by what he said. Is there any truth to this? Probably, because he was very serious about this, but I personally did not experience this. He said that he was working a voting poll one time where they were doing this, where everyone would come into this area and they would vote. What they would do is they would take their index finger, they would put it in red paint or some kind of a red dye, and they would go in and they would put on a piece of paper who they voted for. So he said he was out doing this. This is back with a unit that was before mine, so it was not involved with my unit. He said that voting went smooth. Everybody did their little voting thing, and they had left for the evening. Okay? Hey, the voting's done. Cool, they get out of there. The next day, he goes on patrol in that area around the voting booths. There are a ton of fingers that have been cut off and are in the streets next to the voting booth. There are all kinds of people standing there with their hands wrapped with gauze, with all kinds, wrap, everything. Fingers everywhere in the street. Okay? Think about this. And he said, I will never forget this. These people just looking at me like, where the fuck were you last night? You were here when we were voting. We're doing what you say we have to do. Where were you last night when these people came and they cut all our fingers off? Where were you for that? He said that shit will stay with him forever. And I believe that. I believe these people are savages. Savages. Just absolute. They don't want what we're trying to pitch to them. They don't want that shit. Okay? They're happy doing what they want. They can have any kind of terrorist organization call the shots. We want to try to stop that. They just want to live their lives. That's what it was. So like hearing stories like that and hearing things like that, that really draws questions on like, why are we there? I remember so many random Iraqi kids. I'm talking these little girls, these cute little girls. Their hair looked like beaver tails. Like if they have never seen a hairbrush. Never. Anything like that. These kids, I watch these kids. Nobody wore shoes. All these kids were barefoot. I would watch them play soccer on rocks, like skidding and stuff. And I'm thinking, like, these kids had feet you could probably put a cigarette out on and not even feel it. Like, these people were built different. All right? My heart goes out to the Iraqi people. We caught a lot of bad guys. We did. And hopefully we helped them some way. There was a town that we actually, when we got to this town, they had no electricity. None. No electricity. Or if they did, they had like 1 hour of electricity a day. Try to get all the shit you have to charge or take a shower or do whatever you got to do in 1 hour a day. By the end of us being there for like 6 months in that area, they had at least 6 hours of electricity a day. I didn't do that, but some of the engineers or whoever they did, they got those people at least electricity. They're not going to tell you about that shit on the news. They're not going to tell you that we helped build a school for these kids. They're not going to tell you that stuff. But they are going to tell you about a massive IED or a firefight or something like that. Because the news is all about, if it bleeds, it leads. That is what it is. There was a lot of times in Iraq, you will question things that you're never going to get answers to. It's just the way it is. Some of these Iraqi army and these Iraqi police guys were the most broke off soldiers ever. They didn't really want to do it. Like they were always talking some shit about like, oh, we don't know who the bad guys are. That they know. They know who the bad guys are. A lot of these guys were just pussies and didn't want to actually go fight for themselves. You can't help people that don't want to help themselves. So that's kind of where we were on that one. So that's pretty much what I got for today. All right? I really don't know why we were in Iraq. I don't really know. I know what the goal was, is what we say it was to try to build a democracy, train these people, get them on their feet so they could do the job themselves. We've given them Humvees. They have crew service weapons. We've told them how to build checkpoints. We've done everything we can to try to get these people to fight for themselves. You cannot make them fight for themselves. I try to wrap my brain around what it was, but I really don't know. We had done everything we could to try to help these people. This was kind of like my first deployments this was kind of like my first experiences in my first deployment. However, in my second deployment, I would see more of this because that's all I did was patrols. Guys, that's all I got for you today. We're going to talk about this more, but like I say, please please comment, subscribe. Please subscribe. If you have a similar story, please let me know. Guys, like always, I love you. Thank you so much. Keep on watching.